What's up, Hyperdrivers? The fourth episode of Andor is out, and while it isn't an action-packed episode, we get to learn more about Luthen and his plans for Cassian. We're introduced to the Imperial Security Bureau, and we get to see how Mon Mothma's dealing with Imperial spies in her midst. Not to mention a ton of Easter eggs along the way. But before we get to it, if you enjoy Star Wars like I do and you want to keep up with all the Star Wars content that we put out on this channel, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can jump to Lightspeed every week with us right here on the Hyperdrive. The episode kicks off right where we left off with Cassian and Luthen escaping Ferrix. Luthen is telling Cassian where a med pack can be located since he was shot during their escape. While Cassian looks for it, Luthen tells him to grab hold of something because he's about to make the jump to Lightspeed. One thing I thought that was really cool here is how Luthen is able to talk to the onboard computer to make the jump rather than to have to punch the coordinates in like they've done on every other Star Wars ship in every movie, Imperial or otherwise. So it goes to show you that Luthen clearly has some money. He makes the jump and Cassian is thrown into his chair. Cassian states that he's been on a Fondor Hallcraft before but never one like this. So Luthen has made some modifications to this vessel. I would say that Cassian was surprised with the jump to Lightspeed itself, but given that he states later that he was on Mimban, I think that he was just surprised that the ship has these capabilities. When Luthen was talking to the onboard computer, he states the planet Aldhani, which leads Cassian to ask what is Aldhani. But Luthen is first reluctant to tell him because Cassian hasn't agreed to join his cause. Luthen gives him a Mednog, which I'm not really feeling that name, but we'll go with it. Then Luthen again makes a pitch to Andor for him to join his cause. He tells Cassian that he wants to take something of great importance from the Empire, to which Andor scoffs at and says that he doesn't need him to steal anything from the Empire. Luthen then tells him that he can give him all that he wants all at one time, which is to put a real stick into the Empire's eye and get paid for it. Andor scoffs again because he thinks he has Luthen figured out. He thinks that he is part of either the Alliance, the Separatists, the Guerrillas, or a partisan front. Now, I really don't think the Guerrillas refers to any specific group, but the partisan front was run by Saw Gerrera. The Separatists were the remnants from the Clone Wars, obviously, and the Alliance is the Rebel Alliance. During the trailers, I thought that we would get to see information about the Rebel Alliance and how it formed, but it seems like it's already formed in this TV show, or at least to some capacity already in operation. Cassian thinks that it's all useless. He then goes on to tell Luthen that you don't know me, that he fought in Mimban when he was just 16. Now, Mimban refers to a planet that a skirmish was fought on between the Empire and the Mimban Liberation Army. We got to see some of this in the Solo movie where Han Solo actually fought for the Empire for a time just before he became a smuggler. Also, another character from the comics, Baylord Valance, also fought on Mimban for the Empire before he became a bounty hunter. So this could be two possible cameos that we may see in this show. Cassian then goes on to say that we just ended up fighting ourselves, to which Luthen agrees with him that the Empire was just fighting each other. This may be something that may have changed for the recount of this skirmish, or maybe additional information that we'll get in a future episode. The original account of this battle took place 10 years before the Battle of Yavin, so before the original movies, so that would make it 5 years before the events of this Andor series. And the skirmish has the Empire against the Mimbanese Liberation Army and not the Empire itself. So when he says that the Empire pitted themselves against each other, maybe what they're talking about is that the remnants of the Republic, which consisted of some clone troopers, may be fighting alongside the Mimbanese against the Empire. Anyway, Luthen states that Cassian was a cook and was only on the planet for 6 months before he ran, which is the reason why he survived. So way to knock down his achievements, Luthen. He then tells Cassian that he didn't come for the Starpath unit to begin with, that he really came for Cassian himself. And he's willing to pay him 200,000 credits if he will help him steal the quarterly payroll of the entire Imperial sector. I don't know, Cassian, I think he's lowballing you there. Next, we cut to Coruscant. The shot as we pan over the city looks great, but it gives me more of the vibes of New York City than it does Coruscant. It just doesn't have that depth that the planet has, and it's lacking all of the traffic for some reason. Here we get introduced to the Imperial Security Bureau, or ISB, and we hear the voice of Supervisor Grandy stating that the detention estimates are expected to increase in the Ryloth sector. This is referring to the conflict between the Twi'leks and the Empire. You can see more about this in The Bad Batch or Star Wars Rebels. But basically, the Twi'leks led by Shan Syndulla resist Imperial control at the end of the Clone Wars. If that last name sounds familiar to you, it's because Shan is the father of Hera Syndulla, who is also seen in Star Wars Rebels. We are then introduced to Major Pradagaz, which, if he looks familiar to you, this is the guy from Game of Thrones who was the Master of Whispers. I love to hate this guy. Anyway, he's coming down pretty hard on his staff. One of the supervisors mentions Arvala 6, which is cool because Arvala 7 is the planet that Kuil lived on when he was visited by the Mandalorian Din Djarin in the first episode of The Mandalorian. Pradagast then asks what is the purpose of the ISB, to which Dedra recounts what was written in the ISB mission statement. Pradagast states that this is wrong. He thinks that the ISB is more of a healthcare provider that is there to discover diseases and remove them. Diseases referring to anyone that is not loyal to the Empire, and removing them, well, you know where I'm going there. The ISB kind of mirrors the Nazi SS during World War II. He then addresses Blevin about the incident on Ferrix, which Blevin recounts the incidents that happened on episode 3 of Andor. During his report, he mentions the stolen Starpath unit that was recovered. This sparks interest from Dedra since she has a missing Starpath unit that was stolen and thinks that there's some connection there. Blevin states that he's leaving to Ferrix to get a full report. Pradagast then addresses Jung about the added protection requests for traffic in the Abrian sector. Jung states that these are proactive measures to an increase in construction shipments going to Scarif. Scarif is the planet seen at the end of Rogue One. This was the home of the Imperial Center of Military Research. The construction here that he's referring to could be the construction of that facility, but I'm more inclined to believe that it's the construction of the Death Star they're referring to, since it was moved to the planet Scarif from Geonosis around this time. We then go to Aldhani, where Luthen and Cassian have landed. Luthen asks Cassian to make up a name that he's going to go by, which he then chooses Clem. Luthen then gives him a blue Kyber crystal as a form of down payment, but says that he will want it back. Two things here. First, the Kyber crystal around his neck makes me think of the beginning of Rogue One, where Jyn Erso's mother was wearing a similar crystal around her neck. So this could be what unites them or signifies them as part of the Rebel Alliance. It's a far stretch, but roll with me on that one. Second, and way cooler than the first, is Luthen states that this is a Skystone which celebrates the uprising of the Rakatan invaders. This is the first time that the Rakatan Empire has been mentioned in anything live action. The Rakatan Empire was a race of Force-sensitive amphibian beings that attempted to conquer the galaxy long before the formation of the Republic. They were first seen in the video game Knights of the Old Republic, which featured Revan, and gives me more hope that we're going to get to see something related to the Old Republic coming soon in live action. We are then introduced to Vel, who's Luthen's second in command, but who's leading the incursion to steal the Imperial payroll. Luthen tells her that she'll be taking Clem along as an extra member to the team, which she firmly expresses that she has issues with. Luthen tells her in a very stern voice that she will have to do this, that this mission cannot fail. So Cassian and Vel then venture off to the base of operations. Now this planet gives me a very Lord of the Rings kind of vibe with the whole scene. I really love the cinematography, the landscape, everything about the scenes with them walking to the base is beautiful. We then cut back to Morlana 1, where Blevin is demanding that Sergeant Linus, Chief Hine, and Deputy Inspector Karn relinquish all reports, weapons, datacoms, anything pertaining to the incident on Ferrix. I love that they give you a little bit of humor when Blevin is digging into them and then Linus raises his hand. I thought that was great. It gave me a little bit of a chuckle. So basically, Karn going on his own got them all fired, and now the Morlana system is under permanent Imperial authority. Now this is devastating to Karn. As we see later on in the show, he goes back to his mother, who I think is either living on Coruscant or somewhere else on the planet. But it looks like he doesn't come from any kind of aristocratic family or any family of importance. His mother slaps him, which is likely because he hasn't been home for some time, because immediately after she hugs him and welcomes him back like the long lost son. It's likely that he wanted to forget his upbringings and gain his name through the military. We then cut back to the long walk that Vel and Cassian are taking to the base, and she tells him of the plan to steal the money from the armory at the Aldhani garrison, to which Cassian has a serious issue with, is because that's not what Luthen told him. They then take cover because some TIE fighters are doing a routine sweep. We then cut back to the ISB, where Dedra has located the Starpath unit in the reports, and she orders her subordinate to have everything on Ferrix delivered to her from Blevin, since this now falls under her jurisdiction. It then cuts back to Luthen approaching Coruscant, where he has his computer make the final landing sequence while he changes into his more fancy clothes. In the trailer, I thought that the sequences showing him in his more aristocratic clothing was to be more of like a flashback, but we find out that Luthen actually puts on a wig, rings, and flashy attire as he approaches Coruscant. You can see here how Luthen has to force a smile and practice being the aristocrat, right? Which I think is really cool. This is great because it shows how hard it is for him to live in this duality. It then jumps back to Vel and Cassian as she describes the history of Aldhani and how the Empire drove the natives south to take over the planet. She explains how this planet is the perfect hub for distribution if one is trying to take over the galaxy. We then go back to the ISB, where Dedra and Blevin are squabbling over the release of the Ferrix files. Blevin will not give them up, so Dedra now takes it up with Pradagast. All these scenes here show how the ISB has a lot of infighting going on for personal gain. No one's loyal to anyone. When we're taken back to Aldhani, we're introduced to the rest of the team that will be on this payroll heist. There's Skeen, Terramin, Nemik, and Cinta. Vel introduces Clem to the rest of the team and states that this was always the plan to have him involved. The team is not thrilled about it. They attempt to question it, but Vel puts them all down and basically this is how it's going to be. The only one that really accepts him is Nemik currently. Since it then treats Cassian's wounds, and Vel tells the rest of the team that she trusts Clem. We then come back to Coruscant for my favorite part of this episode. We get to see Mon Mothma arrive at Luthen's shop of rare antiquities. Lots of really cool stuff to get in here. First, can we take some time to appreciate Mon's ride? That thing is pretty dope. We're then introduced to Kleya, who's Luthen's shopkeeper. She states that the senator has arrived. Now, I said this in my reaction video to the Andor trailer, but I have a feeling that Kleya is Leia Organa. I know this may be a far stretch, but hear me out. First, the woman looks a lot like Carrie Fisher. I really don't think that was an accident in casting. Second, we know that this takes place 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, so it puts Leia in her late teens, which could fit here. Third, Kleya makes note that Mon Mothma has a new driver, so she's clearly paying attention to the details. She also distracts the driver when Mon and Luthen go in the back to discuss the money issues regarding the Alliance, so she's definitely aware of Luthen's going-ons. And we just saw earlier that Luthen had Cassian change his name, so it's possible that she did the same. Sure, Kleya is not the best name to pick, and Leia is part of House Organa, so she's probably a more recognizable person, but she would probably be much more well known on Alderaan and probably not as noticeable in some random antique shop on Coruscant. That's my thoughts anyway. In the antique shop, we see a lot of cool items. We see some Beskar armor, which looks very similar to Din Djarin's armor. We see a Kelikori, which is a Twi'lek heirloom. First time I saw one of these was in the Star Wars Rebel TV show in Grand Admiral Thrawn's collection. Luthen holds up an Utapawan monk cudgel, which refers to the planet of Utapau, which was seen on Revenge of the Sith. But the most unbelievable thing that I wouldn't expect to see on the show is the mask of Starkiller. This is the mask worn by Galen Merrick if you chose the dark side path in the video game Force Unleashed. So it was really awesome to see that. While Kleya distracts the driver, Mon and Luthen have an exchange in the back where Luthen is asking if Mon will be able to come through with the money. Mon explains that it's becoming more increasingly difficult because spies are forming everywhere in the Senate and people everywhere are being replaced with ones loyal to the Empire. Something that echoes what happened in Germany during World War II. Luthen remarks that she has a new driver and Mon explains that she's feeling like she's under siege. Mon says that she thinks that she found someone that can help, but Luthen shoots that idea down. I don't know who that person is that she's referring to, but I'm really looking forward to seeing who that is. We cut back to Aldhani where the last member of the team, Lieutenant Gorn, shows up on a speeder bike wearing a Mud Trooper helmet. Gorn isn't happy at all to have Cassian join the team. Again, we get a little bit of subtle humor when Gorn asks who this is after he's already asked a few times, and Vel just says, "It's Clem, he's here, that's all that matters." We then come back to Mon Mothma arriving home to find her husband preparing for a party. She's upset about the guest list. One of the people attending is Sly Moore, who Mon admits to having issues with. Now, Sly was first seen during Revenge of the Sith at the side of Palpatine when he gave that first Galactic Empire speech. She is also a Force adept. It'll be really interesting to see how that party plays out. The interesting thing to take here is that Mon is not fitting in with the new regime, but her husband is welcoming it. Given that we never see or hear of him during Return of the Jedi or in Rogue One, I wonder if he dies when Mon tries to escape the Empire, or if there's a split because of different ideals. We then cut back to Vel relaying the plan to Cassian about how they're going to steal from the Empire. Cassian has issues with the plan because the ship that they have as the getaway cannot outrun the TIE fighters. But Gorn explains that there's a celestial event that happens on the planet once every 3 years called the Makani Bray Dani, which is like a meteor shower that everyone comes to witness. It's beautiful from the ground, but it's chaos in the skies, and that's going to be their window of cover. Interesting thing here, and it could just be a coincidence, but the last spelling Donnie is identical to Donnie Harrison, who's the son of Beatles member George Harrison, and who also played FN-0878 in Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. Then we're back at the ISB where Pradagast hears out Blevin and Dedra's argument. Pradagast rules in favor of Blevin based on that she doesn't have any certifiable proof. Before the scene ends, Pradagast states to her that he's impressed with the detention numbers on Sev Tak. So it just goes to show you that he's more interested in arresting people who are not loyal to the Empire than anything else. At the end of the show, the team is having dinner and Cassian is given what he needs to learn before the next morning. And that's where the show ends. I'm really excited to see this heist in the next episode. I'm enjoying the balance of story, action, and humor that's happening in the show, and it just has a very serious tone, which I'm really loving a lot. So far, it's delivering as expected in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about this show in the comments below, and until next time, may the Force be with you.